Hey there. Quick heads up before we dive in. My new book, Connections That Count: How to Transform Your Network into Influence, Leadership, and Career Growth, is available for pre-sale right now on Amazon. If you've ever wondered how to build your relationships that actually move your career forward, this book is your roadmap. Reserve your copy today and be among the first to get it when it drops on November 13th. Just search Connections That Count by Tim Newman on Amazon. Welcome back to Speaking with Confidence, the podcast that helps you build the soft skills that lead to real results. Communication, storytelling, public speaking, and showing up with confidence in every conversation that counts. I'm Tim Newman, a recovering college professor turned communication coach, and I'm thrilled to guide you on a journey to becoming a powerful communicator. Today's guest is Amy Adler. Amy is a nationally recognized career and resume strategist who has spent years helping executives, professionals, and even students tell their stories on paper in a way that gets them noticed. She's the founder of 5 Strengths Career Transition Experts, a speaker at national conferences, and a coach who knows how to translate a career into powerful language that actually opens doors. So if you've ever wondered how to make your resume or LinkedIn profile reflect who you really are and how to make sure it matches up with what you say in the interview, this is the episode for you. Amy's here to show us how written communication can be just as impactful as a spoken word. Amy, it's so good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today.
You've lived all over the place, and I love having people like you on because, as we travel, we see things that people who stay in one location necessarily don't. So how has your life experiences and travels influence the way that you communicate, whether it's in speaking or writing?
What an interesting question. I think part of it is integrating when you have to integrate into a new place. And as you say, I've lived kind of all over the place, all across the country, from the East Coast to the Intermountain West. And the cultures are very different.
Yeah.
So the New York Minute is a real thing. And out in Salt Lake City, things are very slow and in a pleasant way.
Mm-hmm.
So adapting to the local color, I think, is really important. If we're seeking to interact with people in a way that they expect to be interacted with.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of writing, so that's speaking, but in terms of writing, I think one of the things that I have found as a resume writer is that the farther west I seem to go, the less willing people are to shine a light on themselves and showcase themselves and talk about themselves. And the interesting thing is hiring teams don't care where you live in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking for you to be very self-effacing in your communication style when you're applying for a job. So coaxing that out of people and helping them shine has been really terrific.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because I've never thought about that from a writing perspective and how regions really approach it. But I can kind of see that, in my travels. Now, I've never lived out west, but I've traveled extensively out there, and as you know, like you say, it's way more laid back. It's slower, but I never really thought about that from a writing perspective of how. And we'll talk about this here in a second, how maybe we become more introverted in our writing as opposed to our speaking. I remember when I moved I did my doctorate down in Mobile, Alabama. And when I first got down there, it took me a while to adjust coming from the Northeast. We're moving, we're popping, we think fast, we talk fast, and you go down there. And I remember telling my wife, I've got to plan 2 hours to go to the grocery store because people will just stop and they'll talk to you, and that was kind of a culture shock for me. So I kind of get it.
Yeah, I will tell you a story that my husband reported to me when we were living in Minnesota. We just moved there, and he worked in a building with a fairly tall, like a long elevator ride. And he came home one day and sort of in astonishment said, I got into the elevator at work today and somebody I'd never seen before had no interaction with prior, looked at me, grinned, and said, "I quit smoking 10 years ago today." And he said, "Congratulations." But he had no idea why this person was revealing this detail. And as we lived there longer, it became very clear that you couldn't go to the grocery store for less than 2 hours. And you were meeting people that you knew in this very small town. And people were very open and very willing to share kind of what we felt were extremely personal details with complete strangers, but in the most genuine, kind, and loving way.
Right. And it's why do you think it's not the same from a writing perspective? Because to me, that's just to me, it would seem that we would be more open with writing, because it's to me that's a much more personal thing that maybe we don't think people are going to see or judge like speaking.
Yeah, you know what? I really don't know. Since I launched my resume writing practice in Salt Lake City, I kind of only had that perspective, but I was very surprised that in my interactions with my clients, I was always the fast talking one.
Right.
And I had to learn to slow down and frankly, learn to listen better, use those active listening skills in a way that I didn't, it's not that I didn't use them, it's just I didn't use them in the same way. And providing a real space, like a space with boundaries for them to say what they wanted to say without that New York interruption all the time, sort of state of being that I found very normal. I quickly learned was not very normal. So communicating with people the way they expected really helped a lot. And slowing down to the point where I felt I was crawling. Speaking the way I am right now is incredibly slow to me. But I think it helps the audience, or my audience, understand what I'm asking and convinces them in some way that I'm really listening. Of course, I would be listening anyway, but showing them.
Yeah, I also think that's a learned skill. So, slowing our. If we're not slowing our thoughts, at least we're slowing our speech. We're slowing down how we come across. And for me, even though I am from the Northeast, I've always been kind of a slower talker because I have to be, because of how my brain works. The ADHD. If I just spewed out everything that comes into my head, it wouldn't be good. So learn how to slow down and actually communicate the things that you actually want to communicate. And the whole idea that you brought up of, the platinum rule, meeting people where they want to be meted, meeting people where they want to be meted, meeting people where they want to be met, is so important. And communicating how they want to be communicated to really does build a much deeper connection with the audience.
And if my goal then is to help people find a way to trust me, which I know has to be extremely difficult. In many cases, we've never met face to face. We don't know each other. We might have a mutual connection. But I have to convince them somehow that I'm on their side, that I'm listening, and that I'm going to do right by them in one of the most important decisions or thought processes of their lives. Maybe third, let's put it third after finding a life partner and maybe having kids. Getting a job is going to be the next big thing. Yeah.
Right.
So helping them feel as comfortable as possible and giving them as much of the floor as they want it is key. And sometimes communicating for me is saying nothing, just letting them talk, giving them the space, like I said, because that's what they really want. They want to listen to somebody who is empathetic, who's going to listen, who's going to turn what they are saying into something compelling for their future audiences.
Exactly.
I often joke in my first sort of introductory call with people, I talk a lot about how this works and what I'm going to do and answer their questions. And then almost uniformly tell them, this is the most I'm ever going to speak. I want to ask you questions and I want this to be your space. And I think people are surprised by that, because I don't think many people have had the opportunity to be asked all these questions and then given as much unfettered room as they want to say what they want to say.
Yeah, because I think, most of the time when we're having conversations with people, we're waiting for our turn to talk. We're not actually listening and trying to understand what whoever it is that we're communicating with, what they're actually saying. And when you come across somebody like you, who, especially in the professional setting, you're trying to help them. If you don't listen, there's no way that you can help them. If you don't let them say the things that they need to say or get across the things that they need to get across, there's really no way that you can truly help them, meet the goals that they're trying to meet.
And it also gives them a chance to, maybe for the first time ever, talk about these things that are in their heads, their experiences, their goals, their hopes for themselves, and launch that discussion, so that this is the first time they're having this discussion, but certainly not the last. Because I think the worst time to start that conversation with yourself, or to prepare what you want to say, the worst time to start that is actually in the interview, because that's a recipe for panic, and nobody wants that. And I certainly don't want that for the job seekers who are engaging me, to help them do better than they could do on their own.
Yeah. And you and me are very similar in a lot of things. You're an introvert, and so am I. And here's where I think we differ a little bit. You love public speaking. I like it. It's to me, I wouldn't say it's a necessary evil. I like it, but you love it. And how has being an introvert really influenced your style of coaching and resume writing? Because again, transferring who we seem to be outwardly, even as an introvert, and transferring that into the written form, it's truly an art form.
So I think that's a whole bunch of questions, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's good. But I will tell you, so when I was a kid, getting up and doing the book report in front of the classroom, or whatever it was torture. I genuinely had, shaking knees and quavering voice. I was terrible at presenting, and I'm sure I looked like I was having a terrible time, because I was. But something really exciting happened to me as I became an adult, and particularly in business school. So I was an introvert my whole life, and that didn't change. And I definitely recharge slowly and expend energy fast, right? But in business school, we had to present so much that it was almost a weekly thing. And I just got used to it. And all of a sudden I realized it wasn't quite as scary as I had thought it was in the past. And I was genuinely terrified, whether from a sense of introversion, or at that point shyness, or just the sense that I felt like everyone was judging me. And I'm sure they weren't, because people are never as interested in you as they are in themselves. I definitely know that now. But it became this, I loved having this sense of command over the room, and to share what I knew, and to feel like an expert. So taking that expertise and shifting that to a one-on-one conversation, or that sense of excitement around talking to people, it's kind of the same thing, not just fewer people, right? So shifting that to a one-on-one interaction, and using that, I think, the superpower of introversion, like listening and mirroring somebody. I didn't know that was a thing. I think I read it might have been in Quiet. I don't know if you know the book. It's about what it means to be an introvert, and what it means to have that as a superpower. But to interact with people the way they're interacting with you, so they feel more comfortable, like you're listening to them, and then absolutely blowing that up on paper, and taking what somebody might think as their story is very ordinary, and turning it into something so magical and so special and so profound and so impactful, helps them get out of that space too, and gets them away. I don't know whether they're going to be introverts or not. I mean, most of the time my clients are introverts, just because I think the people I attract, but getting them away from being shy, which is a totally different thing, being self-effacing, being the person who wants to hide all the time, and saying, look what I did. I turned this career of mine into something people need. And I'm using it, sort of using a resume writer, using this vehicle, this thing that I do for them. And as a job seeker, I can say, if I'm the job seeker, I can say, yeah, I got some help, but look how good this looks. Look how competent I look, and I feel so much more excited and kind of in my center of power to go and showcase all the things that I know how to do. So I hope I'm giving them the not just the letter, but the spirit, if you will, of
Right.
owning their story and helping them get out of wanting to be self-effacing and wanting to be quiet. And I can't change whether they're going to be introverted or shy.
Right.
And I don't want to because I
Right.
would
That's
be,
that's just who we are, right? And
it's
that's
just who
how
we
we.
are.
Yeah.
So if I am comfortable with that and say, I know who you are, I understand where you're coming from, but here is where you are so amazing at what you do. Please use this language. Please use these stories because
Hmm.
they tell something so compelling about you that people just can't ignore. I think that's how that
Yeah.
converts. And people feel, I hope, like they've learned something about themselves, whether it's literally the stories they've already had stored in their heads or frankly, just a way to tell those stories.
Do you have a story where you take somebody like you just described, and they've truly blossomed and truly kind of grew into who they are and shined as the introvert or the shy person, and going on to truly embrace that and be successful?
So, well, I can't say about the one I'm thinking of is such a new story. It's probably in
Mhm.
the last 2 to 3 weeks. So there is no end to the story yet. We don't know how
Right.
it's going to roll out. Um, but somebody who felt kind of beat down in their job, I'm thinking of, and they've been at their company for a couple decades, like a while, had multiple roles, did some pretty spectacular stuff, but felt kind of marginalized, I think is the best way to put it,
Mhm.
and that they didn't recognize their own zone of genius. And I think
Mhm.
when they saw the first draft of the resume, there really weren't too many revisions on it. When they saw the first draft of their resume, I just got an email, so I didn't talk to the person about it at that time. But I got this sort of like wow message. I had no idea there was a way to encapsulate all the things I had done and make this forward looking rather than sort of sad and retrospective. I don't know what else to call it. And to kind of get the guy out of their funk, right? Like
Right.
out of the boundaries or the lane they had set for themselves and say, well, this is all I can do. This is all I ever was. And I must have hit my peak some time ago. I really don't think that's true. And helping them see their magic is so great. I will also tell a story. This is way back in the beginning of my resume writing career, and I've been doing this now like 16 odd years. Um, it was for an HR person, and she, um, I don't remember if it was an email or a phone call, but I remember the language because it was so striking and kind of humorous. Um, so she's in HR, so she does
Looks at
all
this
the
stuff.
functions of
Right.
HR, including
Right.
hiring and all that other stuff. She said, I don't know who this girl is, but I think I have to hire her. And I was like,
Awesome.
wow, we won.
That's
We
awesome. Yeah.
absolutely won. And it made me feel so good that, I changed her perspective on herself. And that's really what I hope to do because there's so much to going in to the process with confidence
Mhm.
and feeling that special spark that I think is contagious.
It really is, and I love that because, if we think about the whole job search process, we do try and cram everything it is into, depending on your career, whatever, a 1 to 2 page, "This is what I've done, this is who I am," and it's very bland, it's very, like you said, not forward thinking, and you look at it, you say, "Okay, I've accomplished this stuff, but so what?" I mean, it's not it doesn't really empower us, but to be able to, to do what you do, for people to see who they are, to feel good about those types of things, changes the mindset to go in to even thinking about preparing to go into an interview. It's not, well, I've done these things. Okay. It doesn't really mean anything, but change that mindset to, to feel good about it and to develop the stories to be able to tell in that interview that's going to make these people shine.
It's so lovely when that happens.
Yeah.
And I think people don't come into the resume writing process with anything more, kind of as you said, with anything more than the notion of, well, I need this piece of paper because I have to go give it to somebody.
Mhm.
Uh, And the default mode is always, let me just write down what HR thinks my job is. And that's absolutely like, well, okay, 99% of the time, never the case. Sometimes it is. But I'd say in the main, it's people taking what HR has told them or what their boss has told them they need to be doing and finding a new way to make themselves successful in that position. And then because they've owned what they are doing, they can talk about the ways they have done things that no one else has ever done before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest mistake in that sense that people make is assuming that anyone in the role would have done it this way. And I've heard that more than once, that people are like, well, of course I would do this. I would have done this or would have taken this particular project on or done it this way because that was what the job was. And I was like, no, that's what you did in the job. The job is what HR said. You show up and you do this thing and you report to this person, you have this team or whatever it is. You decided to make something new out of it. So let's talk about how you did that.
Yeah, that's a truly, truly interesting point. I've never thought about it that way. Now, I think I may have approached it that way, but to putting it like that, because we all do approach and think about things differently, but not necessarily from the job perspective or the task perspective even. That's a really interesting point.
I appreciate your saying so. And I think that's what the same reaction that I get from my clients is, I just literally never thought about it this way before. I literally never thought about it this way. So I get the privilege then of reflecting back to them exactly what they're saying to me. I can't make anything up and I certainly don't want to, but to push a little harder and say, so who else benefited from this? Or who did you have to loop in to make this a viable, ongoing concern or whatever the question might be, or something as simple as, so that automation that you built, what did it replace? And how long did it used to take? And how long does it take now? And they're like, oh yeah, it used to take a week and 5 people, and now it takes 2 days and 3 people, something like that. And people are, my clients sometimes don't make that connection.
Right.
And I love connecting those dots for them.
And then you take that and you build that into the story during an interview, and now you've shown real value. Right.
Right. And I think the win there is the confidence that comes with being able to tell these stories in a competent way, sort of beginning, middle, end, here's the win, but also to show to your audience, the people who are doing the hiring, that you are intentionally de-risking their hiring process. You're saying, I have done what you need before. So because I've done it before, I can show you how well how good it turned out. And I can promise you I'll do the same kinds of things for you in the future. So the situation might not be identical, but if there's a process that needs to be fixed, well, I did this one, it was 7 days and now it's 2 or whatever I said. And it was 5 people and now it's, X people and so much time has been saved. You probably have a different process, but I understand the mechanism for making that happen. And you can absolutely count on me to do that into the future. And they're like, oh, this person's already done this. I don't have to explain the value of a lean operation or the way this works. And I can just give them the context and the things, the tools that we have, and let them go and let them do the thing that they're hired to do and that they can do best. And that's a very compelling sense of confidence, I think, on the part of the hiring team.
Yeah. And my guess is this all kind of leads back to the overall strategy of building the content of the resume. I guess that's where you really start, right? Would that be a correct assumption?
So yes, but the resume strategy has really 2 pieces. If you can think about the resume as being in the middle, everything that came before is their history. Where they want to go is over here. So this document is supposed to connect those 2 things. So knowing all the things you have done or being able to talk about them or uncover them in the process and knowing exactly where you want to go makes that resume a marketing document, not just a laundry list of stuff you've done. And that is so much more effective.
100% agree. But how do you figure out what the strategy is, though? Right. I mean, because I'm just thinking about it, take me for example. I've kind of got an idea of the things I want to do. I definitely know what I've done, but I'm not really sure on how I'm going to get to, point B based on things I've done. How do you help somebody to define or develop that strategy? Because that to me, um, you've already opened their eyes in you've already opened their eyes in how they view themselves and the things that they've done. Now, how do you get them to develop that strategy moving forward, if that makes sense?
It absolutely makes sense, and
Okay.
it's an extremely important question, and I'm glad you
Mhm.
raised it. So I say I'm an executive resume writer or resume writer
Mhm.
and career coach. Career coach is a pretty expansive term.
Right.
There are some people who are career coaches who don't write resumes, and there are some people who are career coaches because they have to be because they write resumes, and I think I
Mhm.
fall into that category. Um, I frankly wouldn't be the right person for someone to say, I have no idea what I want to do, not a clue. I haven't thought about it. And I just know it's nothing I've done before. That's too big of a question for somebody who is operating in the space that I'm operating in.
Okay.
But if somebody says, I've done all these things, I know I'm good at it. So here's my body of work, so to speak. And in the future, I'd like to work in this adjacency or in same kind of role, but a different industry. This is
Okay.
something I can work with. Or they might say, I'd like to do
Right.
something in a different industry and in a slightly different role. Is that possible? And I'm always kind of navigating this with my clients and saying, well, you can pull as many levers as you want, but the more levers you pull on this, the harder it's going to be for your resume alone to make this compelling argument. We can do what we can, but we can't change who you are and what you've done. We can only reframe it.
Right.
So when they get to that point, I want them to share with me job postings that they might be interested in. And this is just a series of thought experiments. It's free. There's no cost to doing this other than time. And I think it's such a worthwhile exercise because it does a couple things. It enables people to follow whatever path they want to follow, whatever thought process they want to follow, as many times as they want to do it. So they could say, well, I'm going to look at path A through path, Q, and then start narrowing stuff down. That's just time to do that.
Yeah.
And if they say, well, I want to be a dentist, but they've never gone to dental school, they didn't study science. Well, but then I have to say, okay, fine. You might want to do this. And maybe the first plan is to get you to dental school. And if you want to do that, what do we need to do to make sure you can do that?
Right.
That's literally never happened before. That's just a hyperbolic example. But I did have one young guy call me at one point who was, I think, a year or two out of college, who insisted he wanted to be a CEO for $500,000 a year. I didn't
Yeah.
know how he was going to do that. And I pretty much told him, like, this is a great aspiration for you. And I'm sure it will happen someday down the road. It's just not going to happen now. It's not going to happen today. So what can you
Right.
do that's going to get you where you want to go? That's the next stepping stone. But let's say we have a reasonable solution set of job postings and, 3 or 4 or 5, maybe. The goal is to have them all look the same, mostly the same, because this tells us two things. One is that the job the person's looking for, that kind of a job exists. So we're not making stuff up here in this market.
Right.
I don't think we have the privilege right now anyway of making our own way into jobs. They usually have to be out there and somebody has to be
Right.
hiring for them. That could change. It was different in the past. I just think the market
Right.
now is a little bit tighter. So the job exists, and the job exists in sufficient quantity, like I said, 2, 3, 4, 5, that it'll exist again. So this resume is something that somebody can use into the future. So if they don't get an interview for that very first one, it's not like their all hope is lost and they have to start over. They have this very thoughtfully prepared, targeted resume that they can use to lots of jobs that are like this. And having people do that research gives them a framework to say, this is what I want. This is what I don't want. This is what I never want to do again. And here's where I think it matters. Here's where I think I can make a difference. And even if the job is, the job postings are scattered across the country, I don't care about that, because apart from particularly regionally specific roles, the jobs will show up again in some
Right.
similar way, because HR broadly has already thought these things out, and we're just taking advantage of the fact that they've done all this research already. So they now have a goal that's kind of written down, more solidified than it was before. Because I want a new job is pretty scary, but I want this job in this industry. That's pretty doable. That feels
Right.
much more manageable, and it intentionally sets constraints on the process so people can do what they want to be doing, as opposed to be flailing, guessing, worried.
Yeah, and I guess it also seems not only doable, but the small wins. It seems like it's in reach. It's not like you said. It's not the $500,000 CEO role. That okay, yeah, like you said, it's aspirational. The industry I come from, I was in the sport industry, and I had students who said they wanted to be the general manager of pick a team. I said that's great. I let's figure out how we're going to get you there. But there are
Yes.
only 32, Major League Baseball general managers. You're 32 possible. You're not just going to walk out of here and go into that role. There's things that you would need to be to do. And while that goal is out there, let's focus on some attainable stepping stones first. Get that first huge win, get that next win, and that's what really from my perspective, that's something that really builds confidence and momentum. Not only focusing on this and failing because 2 years down the road you haven't reached that yet.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think being realistic but also aspirational,
Yeah.
kind of sets the direction and the pace.
Mm-hmm.
And just, if something doesn't happen today, it doesn't mean it won't happen in the future.
Right. And when we talked before, you told me a story about your client who asked about a resume, and he was going into prison. To me, that's a really powerful story, because they're already thinking, okay, when I'm done, things are going to be different.
I genuinely hope that's what happened. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
lost a follow up, as they say. This person was genuinely concerned about what was going to happen when he got out, and he knew he wasn't going to have access when he was inside, right? And he certainly had plenty of skills. This was not a violent criminal. This was somebody who behaved badly, and got called on the carpet for it.
Right.
But he would seem like a nice guy. He had a lot to offer, and he wanted to prepare himself. I mean, I think that's an extreme. To be honest, I haven't worked with maybe more than 2 or 3 people who were working against a sort of systemic issue like that.
Mm-hmm.
Most people show up and they just don't know how they're going to make the next step. I won't even call it a leap, but just the next step between where they are to the thing that they maybe should be doing next. Maybe it's for better money, better work-life balance. Maybe it's because they want a new challenge, or maybe they want to step back from a challenge. I recently worked with somebody who I thought, I was surprised because I guessed, oh, you must want to be doing this in your next role. He said, no, I'm at the end of my career. I love what I'm doing. I just want to keep doing it and know that I can contribute and
Mm-hmm.
be okay being in this particular situation, kind of the number 2 guy in the department, not the number 1 guy, because I'm good at it and it's rewarding in its own way. So people just have to know what they want and how they're going to get to move forward.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, my guess is most people go through this at some point in their life, right? The uneasiness, the unknowing, the trepidation of what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? And they're not alone.
No, by far.
I think knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that there are people out there that can help you, and being willing to reach out and actually ask for that help is huge and important. And I think that If people would understand that reaching out and asking for help is not a weakness, it's really a strength, and that most people, if you reach out and ask for help, they're going to help you, or they're going to direct you to somebody who can help you. You know, if I can't help you, I'm not going to say I can help you, but that's not my area. But let me connect you to this person over here. They could probably help you, and if they can't, they'll direct you to whoever. But I think most people have been in this situation before. If not, they will be.
I appreciate your saying this. I hope there's no stigma in asking for help for something you do maybe twice in your life or three times in your life. There's plenty of things I don't know how to do. Right. I don't know how my car functions under the hood. Like, I just don't. Like, I can do a handful of things. I can't do all of it. And I don't feel like it's a shameful thing to ask. I go to the dentist like everyone else does because they know stuff. When something happens, I go seek out a professional. But I think people think about this differently. But if we turn it all around and say, and I work with senior level players most of the time, not all the time. I've worked with kids as young as high school, and they're awesome. But if I'm looking at sort of management all the way through sort of the top echelons, these are people who are accustomed to hiring really smart teams, talented, capable people every day for their companies. And whether they hire one person or 50 people, they're saying, I trust you, my team down, where you're sitting. I trust you to do this better than I could. That's why I brought you on. If I thought I could do it better or faster, I wouldn't hire you. But I'd like to see people translate that to hiring experts in other realms. I do this every single day, certainly more times in a week, maybe, than some people do in a lifetime. So I'm here to offer that expertise and say, I've traveled this road. I'm pretty sure I know what works. I want to get to know you so I can take what I know, shape it to what you need, and then you can go be successful. And there shouldn't be, I don't think, that stigma of I had to get somebody to help me tell my story. Because when was the last time you did it? That was practically never.
Exactly. Yeah. So now let's take this step forward. So we have the resume, we have the written document. How do you make sure that the written and the verbal actually match the person? Because to me, that is so incredibly important. I've hired people. I looked at the resume, and then I talked to them. I said, "Wait a second, there's something's not adding up here."
Okay, foundationally, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying to start, but this has to be part of the conversation. Foundationally, the responsibility for being truthful is on the job seeker. I can't tell if they're telling the truth. I mean, sometimes I can guess. It's only happened maybe once or twice, and I've been suspicious. If it's something I can corroborate by just looking at what's publicly available in the news, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure. And I'm going to ask those questions. Like, well, it looks like the company went bankrupt in 2012. What happened after that? Something like that. You didn't mention it, but you were obviously doing A, B, and C during that time. What do we have to say? And if they don't talk about it, maybe there's a reason. And if it's just not relevant, maybe there's a reason. So that's foundational to every project. And like to the point where it's like in my terms and conditions, like you have to tell me the truth. And my obligation on the flip side is I'm not going to make anything up. I'm not going to fabricate. But let's say if that's a given, that's already taken care of. So then if that's not the mismatch that you're talking about, I have written resumes for people for whom English is not their first language, but their skills are phenomenal and their expertise is really good. I'm thinking of, I want to say he was an accountant or a finance guy in a company. I forget exactly what he did. I think it was accounting. But he had grown up and gotten his education somewhere else. Didn't make his expertise any less powerful, but writing in English just wasn't a strength. So he wasn't probably going to sound in person the way his resume sounded, but his expertise, it was so clear that he could talk about every single point. But there's other situations, and maybe this is where you were going. And I think that's by the way, a very legitimate way
Yeah, absolutely.
to engage a resume writer, to say,
Mhm.
tell my story because I need to talk to an audience, and you're going to be better at this in my language skills. This is my second or third language. This is your first. But I think in the sense that people use specific language in their way of
Yes.
speaking and
Yes.
in their industries, particularly.
Mhm.
I have to be able to take that and say, this is what I think you're trying to say here. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So writing a resume is not this, it's not like you're writing something in blood and it's immutable or that I can't take it. I've been writing and editing for over 30 years. This is professionally speaking. So if I can't take being edited, I'm in the wrong industry. And I do believe in the power of collaboration. And if somebody says, we would never use such and such phrase, we only use the acronym, I think I might stand my ground and say, let's spell it out once and then use the acronym throughout. It makes more sense. That's how people are going to know it, whatever the thing is. Or we never call it, I don't know, whatever it is. We never call it this. We use this phrase because this is the way our industry thinks about this. Great. Educate me. Tell me how you want this. And hopefully by this point, I would have gotten the message. But even if it's in the very last round, I am all ears and I want people to tell me what they think and to work with me to make this thing, this document, the best thing it can be and the most compelling story it can tell. So there's no fences that I'm putting up, or there's no sense of being insulted about how I'm conveying what I'm putting on paper. I want people like it's very hard to put me down. And I think the only way anybody could possibly, offer that kind of insult is to say, I don't like this, but I don't know why. And you're not fixing it. And well, none of this is actually, well, people can say they don't like it. There's no part of me that wouldn't jump right in, drop everything and fix something.
Right.
Usually it's something else. It's not, I don't like this. It's, I don't understand.
Right.
Or, am I really that good? I get that a lot. But it's never, Amy made something up about me and I don't understand why. So I'm really here to engage over and over again, loop back until it's so buttoned up and so tight that it's a powerful message and the person feels very, very comfortable sending it out into the world.
Yeah, I just think that, the congruence is so important because again, when we hire people, at least in my view, we're not hiring a resume. We're not hiring, we're hiring a person that we're bringing into our team. And like you said, that we're hiring somebody because of who they are and what the skills that they bring and the knowledge that they bring and who they are to make our team, our organization better. Right. And if there's not that congruence, they're not, it's just not going to work because the expectations won't align, one way or the other. So I just think it's so important for job seekers to make sure that you're as authentic as you possibly can be in everything that comes out of you, so that it's really obvious.
And
who you are.
That enthusiasm comes through too. Yeah,
exactly.
all those things.
Exactly, and so that kind of leads me to another point. I've spent almost my entire adult career, in higher education. What is it that higher education and career centers are? I think they're missing the boat, but I can't really put my finger on it because I don't think we're preparing, students in higher ed to truly be ready with to career ready with their resume writing, interview skills, that type of thing. What can they be doing differently to better prepare our students?
This is such a multifaceted question. and to be fair, I've seen what I've seen. I haven't been in higher education
Mm.
for these many years myself. But having worked with students, I think the biggest change, and if I could wave a magic wand and say all career centers should offer this, I think to get away from the notion that all resumes, especially for young kids, in this context, all resumes have to be one page, like with no context.
Right.
That's fitting everybody into the same box, and not everybody fits in the same box, and not everybody, even senior level people, not everybody needs a resume that is 2 pages or sometimes 3. I once wrote a resume for a guy 25 years in the same company. It was a 1-page resume because he had one job for 25 years.
Right.
It was totally fine. But I've written resumes for future college kids, kids getting their first jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done so much. They're so engaged that their resumes are 2 pages.
Yeah.
And you know what? That was 2 pages of concrete information.
Right.
Real stuff about these excited, young minds ready to do the next thing. And forcing them to 1 page would have been completely unfair.
Right.
So let them tell their story. Let them tell their story in a way that a more elevated or older professional
Mm-hmm.
might tell their story to you, because that's where they're trying to go. And to say with all of their documentation, oh, all I've done is go to college, it does them such a disservice.
It does.
Because they have volunteerism, they have work study, they have summer jobs, they have internships, they have volunteer stuff abroad, they learn languages, they program in the projects on the computer in their classes, they developed consulting projects, all kinds of things have happened.
Yeah.
So why not let them tell us, me as a resume writer, but I mean like us as adults, as professionals, let them tell us what they're good at and why we should listen to them.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I've been saying for a few years that, the younger generation, I don't even know what we're calling it these days, but the younger generation is, to me, they're so much smarter and so much more entrepreneurial than they've ever been. And they just don't know how to encapsulate that and communicate it. And like you said, trying to force, when I'm trying to get them to open up and share about who they are, trying to force all that into 1 page, to me, it's counterintuitive. So I'm so glad that you said that.
I think what I find frustrating, thank you. First of all, thank you for saying so. What I find frustrating is this sort of conventional wisdom that nobody has time to read 2 pages. And I hope that's not true, because the people who are reading the resumes are probably owning 2-page or maybe 3-page resumes.
Right.
So it's somewhat hypocritical. And I don't even know if it's true. I think if the stories in the resume, whatever they are compelling, and the presentation is clean and easy to read, and we're not going to 9-point type, because nobody needs to see that.
I won't be able to read it. I wouldn't be able to read it, honestly.
No. But why not add, how we say it, like add some air to the document, like space things out, make it readable, make the type a little bit bigger. Meet your audience where they are. What do they need to know about you? And to constrain, anybody into 1 page, it's an interesting exercise in conciseness, but I don't know if it's anything else besides that.
Yeah, I agree, and it just leads me to the next thought in my head. You and I have spent our entire adult careers helping people. That's what we do, right? That's when you break it down to the bottom level. That's what we do. We help people. We try and add value to people. What's the hardest part in your mind of helping people, especially when it comes, to people being stubborn or not being coachable? What's the hardest part for you?
That people come sort of primed.
Yeah.
with fear. They are terrified, and rightly so, especially in this economy. People are getting laid off left, right, and
Yeah,
center,
they are.
often in unexpected and painful ways. They have families and rent and car payments and food bills, electricity, like really that foundational. I don't know what the going figure is. Most people are like 2 or 3 paychecks away from homelessness, right? And people come in legitimately, absolutely terrified. And that is the hardest part to break through, because what seems very normal to me, like I do this every day, kind of like what I was saying before, I do this every day, multiple times a week. This is my domain. I feel very comfortable here. Most people don't do this but 2, 3, 4 times in their lives. And they have no idea what the right thing to do is. And there's so much in the way of bad advice and scam artists out there who haven't done the training and are just looking to make a quick buck. That's not what this is. This is resume writing. Just for people who are listening, resume writing is a practice that is closely held by many, many people who do the training, who do the work, learn every day to do right by their clients. And we're not here to take advantage of anybody. So if we can get people to understand that we are on their side,
Right.
that we're here completely devoted to them, and if you trust that we will care for you and your story and tell it the way you deserve to have it told, maybe that will take some of that edge off. Maybe that will help you not have such a stranglehold on it, even though I know you're out there terrified.
Yeah.
And understand our promise, my promise, that whatever you need, I will help you. And my phone is always on. And I promise that to people because I never want them to feel alone. Because this is weird. I mean, if I were dropped in their job tomorrow with no context or experience, I'd be terrified too.
Right.
But let me be that support structure.
That's so powerful to understand. Especially when you're in a place of vulnerability. You may still be in a position, but it's not a good position, or you may not have a position, and you're really vulnerable because, like you said, you could be a month away from being homeless, and it's the stress and the pressure it's incredible. I mean, I've been there. I know what it's like, and you want to make sure that you think that you can control everything to get you where you need to be, but you need to let some of that control go, because there are people out there who can help you get to where you want to be if you just allow it to happen.
And people who don't believe they are successful until you, the job seeker, is successful. So it might be kind of an unusual way of looking at the logic, but we're not just here to churn out words and hope they come out okay.
Right.
We're here to help in such a way that we I don't know a single resume writer who doesn't feel this way. We internalize the success of our clients, and if that's not happening, we're going to bend over backwards.
Yeah.
In a way that, as much as hiring teams are full of amazing people, because some of them are my clients, right? I know that they've hired plenty of people, and recruiters also have an incredible skill set that I promise you I don't claim to have. Everybody has different obligations.
Right.
The hiring teams have obligations to their groups, or the companies, and the recruiters have obligations to their contractual arrangements with the companies. My obligation is to my job seeker, to my client. I like to say, I don't care what job you want until you tell me what you want. And then I'm 110% in, and I will follow you to the ends of the earth to help you get there, because my obligation is to you, and I want you to be happy and successful and fulfilled. And when it goes absolutely bang on according to plan, it's phenomenal. Just this last week, I guess it was 6 days ago now, finished an update for a former client. And she's like, I found this amazing job. I have to apply for it. Can we do this, yesterday? I was like, all right, let's rearrange my schedule and see what I can do. She had the interview in 4 days, 5 days.
That's awesome.
Hasn't happened yet, so I don't know how it went, but because it's not and won't take place for a couple more days. But that is the like a crystallization of how this is supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
Will it happen every time? No. Have I seen it before this week? Absolutely. I think in the main, people put the work in. They understand their brand. They know what they're standing for. They apply for jobs that they think they'd be amazing at, and they go and they nail it.
Well, Amy, that's awesome. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Where can people connect with you to get their resumes and written communications done?
Thank you. So I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and my handle is Amy L. Adler. Also, you can find my website, which is 5strengths.com. That's FIVESTRENGTHS.com. And if you're interested in a completely complimentary review of your resume or your LinkedIn profile, feel free to pick a time to chat with me at 5strengths.com/let's chat.
Amy, thank you so much for joining us. You've provided so much valuable information and taught me so much in this time, and I can't thank you enough for that. And so take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to get your free ebook, The Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. You can also register for the Forming for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. Before you go, don't forget Connections That Count. How to transform your network into influence, leadership, and career growth is available for pre-sale on Amazon right now. It's packed with practical tools to help you turn your relationships into real results. Grab your copy today and be ready when it officially releases on November 13th. Head over to Amazon and search Connections That Count by Tim Newman.